Millie, Lola, wanna watch a movie? I've got a special movie to show you.
Nan and I had a deal going at the time, so we decided if it was a boy, I'd get to choose the name. If it was a girl, she would get to choose the name. Great. A boy was born. So I said, what about this, that? No, don't like it, don't like it, don't like it.
Oh golly, he was a good baby. He was a very good baby, slept all night. I loved his suckling his dummy.
He was 2 or 3 days old and we're driving home from the hospital. We still hadn't picked out a name. So on the way, it just popped into my head. What do you think of Damien? And Nan said, oh, I like it. And that's how I got the name Damien.
Three girls in one bedroom, 3 boys in the other bedroom. We slept on triple bunks, mum and dad in the other room, 1 toilet, 1 shower. And I think back now, I don't know how we did it.
I guess I consider myself the smart one and Daniel the good-looking one and Damien was the funny one.
And Damien and Daniel decided we were going to have party pies one night for dinner, and they covered them in tomato sauce, and instead of eating them, they threw them around the lounge room.
He was a known scallywag.
I think we were videoing something for Dad, and Damien got me into a fight with some people who were in the playground, and he got into a fight and I ran over to sort it out and stick up for him.
There's just something about him, there's a vibe that he lets off, and when you're around him, you can't get enough.
And his farts will smell worse than kangaroo roadkill.
He'd dress up. One time our cousin from Belfast was over and he dressed up in a tutu. And Damien was a little dicky bird, you know, he was the funny guy in the family.
I know he loved to go around in his little dicky pokers a lot. Him and his brother Daniel used to play ants. They used to get ants on the ground and
he got into a fight with some young kid, and I've come over and stepped in, and then I got into a fight with some other kid. And I remember Damien took off and got one of the fathers from dancing to come down and sort it out. I think I was forever sticking up for Damien.
I put the girls into dancing when they were 3 years old, and he showed interest in acrobats. He loved doing tumbles and cartwheels and that, so I put him in a school at St Mary's just for acrobating, and then from there on we branched and he went into dancing with the girls. And
he took to it like a duck takes the water.
So we danced together at Helen Hayes Dance Studios and also at King Kids later on in our teens. And we were in groups together, classes together. And then when we went to King Kids, so that we were teenagers then, and everybody loved him. And I mean everybody. He was just that guy that everybody wanted to have as their mate.
He wanted money, and I think the only way he's going to get it is to earn it himself. So we started going busking.
And back in the 80s, breakdancing was all the rage. And so George taught Damien a few moves, and then Damien actually got better at it than George. And they went busking together and made a lot of money down in Chinatown, and I kind of pretended like I was their manager and, went down and looked after them and stuff like that.
Young Talent Time was a show set up, mainly a talent show for young people to try and get into show business. Even the adjudicators admitted they'd never seen an act like that, deadpan. And I think that's why Damien didn't win, because they didn't know how to judge it. The girl who won, nice little girl, nice little voice, but very average. And I don't say that because I'm Damien's dad. It just was. It was very average.
Damien made a couple of commercials, I think, by memory.
Where are you going? Oh, but I'm going to be late for school.
He's gonna be late for school.
What a shame.
AIM Fluoride Anti-Plaque Gel. helps keep you safe from the nasties.
When he started his apprenticeship, the first place he went to was the Waterfront Restaurant, which was a pretty fancy restaurant down in Circular Quay in Sydney. He learned a vast array of different type of cooking, you know, even down to making pizzas and that. So next time you're talking to Damien, ask him to make you a pizza.
Because we went to dances together and firesides and all these sorts of things together. And he had his eye on a certain little hot filly. And I remember him coming home after a fireside one night, raving about this beautiful woman.
Then we had the Neuenhausens in our ward. They were very, very sort of strong family, and one of the Neuenhausens girls' name was Jelina. And Jelina was a very attractive young lady that Damien obviously took a bit of notice of.
I guess when he first came on the scene, a little bit threatening that he might have been having eyes for one of our daughters.
He came to pick up Jelina on a date, and he was an impressive young man.
As we were leaving, he walked me out to the car, and at the time I was like, that's a bit curious, but honestly did not think anything more of it. I just thought, he's just being very friendly, just completely over my head.
I think just the respectful way that he dealt with me as a parent, and the way he was obviously kind and nice to my daughter.
Being a teenager, well, I didn't know a lot what he was on about or where he went or did things until later on found out that he was not having the best of friends.
From say he was 15 going up to 17 or 18, he was getting in with some characters who I wouldn't approve of.
He was partially inactive, and he used to come home Sundays after we all went to church. So he would be partying the night before or whatever. So I'm sitting in the chapel this particular Sunday, and I was concerned about him, and I walked up to Bishop Carroll, Ian Carroll, and I said to him, Damien's home now. I said, could you go and see him?
I would attribute a significant part of his decision to go on his mission to a man called Ian Carroll.
Damien was doing very well in the Young Men's program, and then when he left school and started work, it's when he started to drift off into not so attending church, and anyway, he wasn't living the gospel the way he should. And I kept getting this feeling like I should talk to him. And then one Sunday I was waiting for him at the door and he never showed up at church, so I said to his parents, where is he? And they said he's at home. And the Spirit just said to me straight away, go and talk to Damien. And so off I went. Now, when I went there, I had no idea what I was going to say. I think he knew from the time he saw me at the door that what I was there for, and so did the Spirit. And after a little conversation on repentance and so on, I extended the call for him to prepare for a mission.
One day that week, Damien calls me into the kitchen and he said, Mum, I've got something to tell you. I said, oh, here we go. He said, Mum, I'm going on a mission.
But Damien was ready. Heavenly Father had prepared him to serve.
Damien has told me that Ian Carroll, in effect, saved him from staying less active in the gospel and turning his life around and out on.
He was just a young man that was worth saving. I knew him too well to let him go.
He went on a mission for 2 years for his church, and he served in the Melbourne mission.
Damien was my second missionary companion. When he turned up, it was about hard work and a good time.
It's very regimented. You're up at a certain time in the morning. You start off with prayers, then have scripture reading, then breakfast, and then you're out to work. The whole time is spiritual.
I think I read in my diary, we did 50 hours of tracting 1 week, I think it was. We had some really solid people that we taught the gospel to. So there was a guy named Ben Barrett. Then we baptised a lady named Lynn Stone. And she was a great convert and just a good success story for us.
I would write to him and send him care packages.
And there was this thing called the stat letter. So you would write a letter, because there was no computers, so you had to handwrite everything. And then you would photocopy it by how many times missionaries there were and send the same letter out to everybody, so you didn't have to write like 15 different letters. So he was part of that group of letters that I sent out. He got one of those Christmas letters. And in the beginning, it was just really sort of, this is what I'm doing. And I was at uni, and he would share experiences of people he was teaching, and
we would shave each other's hair.
Experiences that he'd had with the Spirit.
We saved up all our money and we bought an AFX track.
Things that he was learning from the scriptures.
We obviously kidnapped one of the missionaries.
And from his companions and things like that. And
bundled him into the boot of the car, tied up his hands and feet and took him somewhere and just caused havoc with him. So then we would create laxative cakes from our other companions in other flats. We were desperate to know if they'd eaten them and what happened. You'd be on the call and you're like, oh, what's happening? And it's like, oh, he can't come to the phone right now. He's not in good shape. And then those type of things were fun. And there was lots of stuff like that. He was good with people. He genuinely was interested in people. He was charismatic in a way.
Very dedicated from what I saw from the letters that he wrote to me. He loved being able to see what the Saviour could do, what the gospel could do for other people.
You're always humbled when the Lord works through you, whether it be speaking assignments or anything else in the church. You know when the Spirit's there, and it's always a humbling experience to know that you're the instrument in the Lord's hands.
I don't think I picked up on it at the time. It's just looking back on it with life experience. I think he was really humbled that he was that instrument that could bring change to people's lives.
And when he came home, that stuck with him, and he's learned a lot there, and it's really changed his life.
He would not be who he is today had he not served that mission, and I know that for a fact.
Once he got home and we were spending more time together, it was almost like I couldn't imagine him not in my life, but my brain was like, no, I still want to go on a mission. I still want to do this. I still want to live my own life. I'm not ready to sort of get married. I wasn't even 21. I was 20. I was very young. And because in my head I wasn't quite ready to make a commitment to anybody, we actually called it off. He'd been at the temple one particular Saturday morning, and he'd gotten a spiritual confirmation that I was the one to marry. And we'd gone out that afternoon just sitting down by the river and we're talking, and he was sensing from me that I was pulling back a bit, and he said, this is how I feel, this is what the Spirit's told me. I love you and I feel that we need to be together, which I guess you could say is a proposal. I said to him, I love you too, but I'm not ready to make a commitment yet, and I just feel like we're going too fast, we just need to stop. This is too much kind of thing. That evening when I broke my fast, I know Ma and Pa were with me as well, and I prayed, and I just got this wash of the Spirit. Yep, he's the right one for you to marry. And so when I went to the Young Adult Fireside that night, afterwards I told him about my experience. So later that week he had a whole thing set up with the help of Larissa and Lydia, where he'd gotten a ring and there was a nice dinner and all this sort of stuff, and he'd spoken to Pa properly and all this kind of thing, and he got down on one knee and did the whole will you marry me and all that sort of stuff.
Because of the type of young man that he was, he did come to see me to ask permission to marry my daughter. He came and respectfully indicated that he'd like to marry my daughter, and I readily agreed.
And I would say without hesitation that marrying Jelina Neuenhausen is his greatest achievement in life.
I think getting married to Jelina was a big deal.
I actually remember saying to Jelina one time, you're too good for my little brother, because she's just so beautiful. I said to Damien once, you best be on your best behaviour, like she's a keeper.
It was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful day. I can picture in my mind how radiant they looked. And the way he looked at her, he obviously just adored her, and she was just floating like princesses do when they get married. But There's one particular picture of them sitting on the lawn out the front of the temple and they're just looking at each other eye and eye, and I think that's lovely. They were in love and that was wonderful. It was a happy day.
I really felt, the only way I could describe it, it was like I just floated the whole time while I was in the temple. I was so elevated by the Spirit that I just felt like my feet didn't even touch the ground. For me, the wedding day could have finished at the temple because that was it. There's nothing for me that could top that, and nothing in the rest of the day topped what I felt.
And then they lived, I think, in Bligh Park for the first couple of years.
It was just like a fun honeymoon for the first year.
Then they had a little boy called Zachary, so I used to go over there quite often and babysit.
I had done a pregnancy test because I was late, and the pregnancy test had showed up that I was pregnant. And so I told him when he got back that I was pregnant. He didn't believe me. He's like, no, they can't. And I had to show the pregnancy test that it was true. He was so elated and came to all the doctor's appointments and all the ultrasounds and just, very much a part of the whole thing. And he couldn't wait. And when we found out that we're having a boy, he was just so stoked. And when you were born, he was just so besotted with you. I guess with most dads, the first few weeks when baby is very much needing mum all the time, even though he was very hands-on, wasn't much to do with the baby that just sleeps and feeds. But as you got more animated and talking and crawling and all that kind of stuff, yeah, you were his little buddy.
He's very lovable, Damien. He's a great husband, a great dad to his family.
That's when Damien chose to embrace the church more strongly. Even though he's a returned missionary, Damo had some challenges. And probably because I shared a lot of those challenges as a convert. We never transgressed any of those challenges together, and it was just sort of like, well, it's really this way or the highway type thing. I'm choosing this way, And I think that's when he really sort of cemented his commitment to the priesthood, cemented his full commitment to church and everything. And I think that just sort of made it, you're living for somebody else and you feel those expectations, and I think,
And then shortly after that, he went into the army.
Probably late 98, and then 99, there was a lot of things going on in East Timor and the battalions were going over, and it was in the news because it was the first time in a long time that there was a really strong military presence anywhere from our military, and so it was real newsworthy. I'd always felt this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you love. Look at you, paintball, the gun. It was always part of his personality just to... He was like a big kid running around the bush with a gun on his shoulder playing cowboys and Indians.
Enlisted in 2000, we would have met down at Kapuka. I remember him being an ex-gymnast, I think it was, so he was, very physically fit, good upper body strength, all that sort of thing, so, basic training was pretty easy for him, I think. I do remember him clearing out an entire level of the barracks, through methane. Obviously, Damien, from memory, got top soldier for Kapuka. Very good achievement. Yeah, we got placed up to 2RAR, 2nd platoon, and both of us were in the same section, 4 section. Damien and I were both scouts, actually, in our section, so we were up the front.
My husband is the head scout of his section.
You didn't know what to think. You didn't know what was, what to expect.
Their section was out on border patrol between Indonesia and East Timor.
I think we left at about 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. We'd had credible intel that, that there was militia in a village up behind our base.
On one side of the river is the Australian soldiers, on the other side is the Indonesians, and both sides have guns.
But going out, it was pitch black. We were all cammed up. We were patrolling with night vision on.
So if anyone's going to get shot first, it's going to be my husband because he's the head scout of the section.
We were walking past people and they didn't even see us. Over there in the villages, there's dogs everywhere, so they always give you away. But this morning, we had to actually go through the middle of a village. Not one dog heard us. Not one dog said a thing. And, we moved a whole, it was about 12 of us through this village without a noise to set up an OP on this village where they were supposed to be, the militia.
He's like, I'm going to go SAS, I'm going to become like the total killing machine type thing. And I think once he'd played with the toys and just realised the sheer impact that they really had, he realised that he really didn't want to go around hurting people.
Because Towns was a bit of an army town, there was like this army shrine down at the beach, and I always remember going there with Mum and Dad, and I think I would just march around pretending to be like a little soldier, like Dad, march around this little army shrine, practice my salutes and everything.
I was a Sergeant PDI posted at Kapooka, and he'd just finished his PT course. That group of people were the best people I worked with in PT. Was that 3 years we all spent at Kapooka together was probably the best that I had in my 20 plus years in the PT trade. So.
We didn't know him from a bar of soap. We didn't know what he looked like. We didn't know what his background was. We didn't know anything about his family. And this clean-cut guy turned up with a big smile on his face, and he was just way too happy with himself. The way he turned up told the whole story. He was spick and span like the army guy that he is, and so I needed new counsellors, and the new counsellors were Morris Agostini and Damien King. But we rolled up our sleeves and went to work, and Damien was a workhorse. Nothing was too hard, and Angelina was the same. He came and never left. I think that's the contribution. I'm enlarged because Damien and Angelina and their family are part of our lives.
They'd just cooked this most beautiful roast dinner, the smell going through the house, and we're all just getting to the time it's time to nearly sit down to have this lovely meal. And he gets a call from President Rancy, his friend that he was serving with in the district presidency. And then he comes out, and they'd had this meeting. They decided they were going to fast. And so he sat at the table with us, but he didn't eat. And that really touched me, because right from the moment they'd had that discussion, it must have been so important, whether they were fasting for a person or something in the district or whatever it was, but that really touched me, and I thought, that action shows me more depth in that man. He could have sat down and had a meal and then started the fast after the meal, but he started the fast before the meal. And that's something that's seared into my mind and my heart.
Watching Dad over the years, he was always the first one to stick his hand up to go serve.
He always strives to do the right thing, always lives up to his priesthood responsibilities.
Knowing my dad's example and what he taught me through his example really gave me a lot of motivation to press on, to serve harder. But yeah, Wari and Wagga, he really got me involved in sport. I think he was a little worried as a kid. I wasn't too interested in sport, and he really enjoys his sport, and he was worried that I would never play sport.
That's the only ever time I used to see him get aggravated was during sporting competitions if he was getting beaten, and especially pressure ball, because he loves his touch football.
The defence force was a big deal, but the sport in defence was the big thing. And I remember he was playing touch for this team, and I finally got to play for that team as well, but every morning he calls me on the way to work. Just to see how my workout was. I said look forward to his call every morning.
Yeah, it was after East Timor, and I got back and I injured myself pretty bad, like jumping off a roof, and I had plantar fasciitis in both my feet. I think that was the catalyst for me to spiral down. I was in a job within the military that I didn't really enjoy, and then mentally started to go down once the physical slipped away. It kind of comes back to that same message of him being there, not being as judgmental and kind of understanding what I was going through. I'm sure we had like lots of chats if I ever needed to call him, and had his mobile, and yeah, they kind of just stepped in and helped me out as much as they could until ultimately made that transition out of the army. Gave me hope for the future, and then I kind of like turned my life around, represent Australia as a CrossFit athlete, and run my own gym now, and pass down some of the messages that he gave to me to like other young people that come into my life. So
I just really admire people who take time for people. And we live in this world where everyone's so busy. And, you know, just a simple text to say, thinking of you, or even commenting on one of my posts, you know, whatever. I'm like, wow, he actually sees me.
So I've been bugging him for years about getting into paragliding, because I was up there for a good 50 minutes and Damien kept going past, and you can always hear him screaming like, woohoo! You know, he'd dangle his feet out, and you knew he was happy, but I could tell he was excited. I could hear him. You could hear him through the mountains. You could hear him.
When I owned the gym, he would take classes for me at the gym, and he'd do just random stuff all the time in the middle of the class. He'd do this weird as head thing where he would get on and do like a headstand and run his legs around his head on the ground, and everyone thought it was just the weirdest thing. Or he'd just do back summies in the middle of the class. Or
he's what you see is what you get, and I think he's probably right up in some people's faces and they don't know how to deal with him, but we love him. He's awesome. He's just like us. So
He really makes us laugh when he rings. Like he cannot but not laugh, and that's his speciality.
When I think of him, I think it's going to be a good time.
He is a wonderful husband and a wonderful father, and I think he's just a good bloke. I think he's a really top bloke.
when you're in something like the military and you're so isolated, and yeah, he kind of stepped in as that role for me at the time, and yes, super grateful, man.
But he has always been that go-to person. Like, you can talk to him about anything at any time, and he's there for you at any time, at any given time.
He's professional, he's brilliant, capable, and nothing was ever too big for your dad. There was never a challenge. If I ever had a task or something, I'd just go, I need this, do you know what I mean? Or if you needed someone to be honest, integrity, courage, initiative, teamwork, all those core values of a soldier. He ticks all the boxes so highly.
He's one of those guys that, will always do the right thing.
Thank you. Thank you for being you and showing what genuine can look like and feel like.
He also had the capacity to be able to see the good side of people, to see what their strengths were inside, what their spirituality might have been, what their psychology might have been.
I would say thank you for the fellowship, and if it wasn't for Damien, who was the only one who fellowshipped me, who knows where I would have been.
Very, very loyal to his family. He always phoning them, contacting them, supporting them, being there for them.
One of the things that impresses me with Damien, he'll call his mother and me at least once a week to check up on how we are. And I find that very impressive.
I guess I want to be like him.
Come here, give us a cuddle.
Who you are. I hope you're the same when you're 60 and when you're 70. Still busting out back summies all over the joint with the same level of energy.
I think by shooting for the stars and achieving it, that's also something that gave him the motivation, in conjunction with his family, to make sure he stayed on the path.
I think Dad's impacted me in a way. I want to emulate the man. I want to be like him.
I'd say, Damien, you are an inspiration and example to me.
There's not many people that get to have a brother like that. He's the best.
Damien King, I love you. And thank you for being such a wonderful son-in-law.
No, I love Damien a lot. I'm so grateful for the amazing grandfather he is to our girls.
On a personal level, one of his greatest achievements is the the way that he's been able to really deepen his testimony and his love of the Saviour as well. But to be able to cling to that testimony when so many of his peers and friends have left the church, and in the environment that he works in, that he's been able to stay true to who he is and to what he knows is right, is I think, his biggest achievement. How do you encapsulate that into a sentence? I would say that I love and adore him, and that the next 50 years will be even better than the last. He's my best friend. I couldn't imagine walking life without him.